Hello, welcome to Café Artistique episode 4 from the nice Gastwerk Hotel here in Hamburg. Today with me is Hendrik Menz. Welcome. Hendrik is Brand and Sales Director at Anso.io, and he is also Deputy Head of Lab in the resort of Metaverse of the Federal Association for Digital Economy. So welcome, Hendrik. It's nice to see you.
Hi, thanks
nice
for
to have
having
you
me.
here. Today we're going to talk about games and marketing, like this connection of that. And it's because it's a quite interesting field. And before we dive into that, I would like to hear what has been your journey, like from starting in the business to here. So where did you start it, and how did you become the sales director you are today?
I definitely didn't plan on becoming a sales director.
I can see that. Yeah.
Actually, I started out in a digital agency around the year 2000. Started out as a graphic designer and a screen designer actually, and I did a lot of programming, so I did JavaScript and desktop development.
Yeah.
The good stuff. And turns out I'm not good at any of that. I'm not good at designing. I know how to use Photoshop, but it doesn't turn out well. And so the same for programming, but I turned out to be quite good with people, so especially to mediate between designers, programmers, and clients. So I did a lot of consulting. I worked in a lot of different agencies, mainly on digital strategy, different international clients. and yeah, through all kinds of dimensions of marketing, digital marketing, from social media to content marketing to classical branding, awareness marketing, up to the point where I was working with clients on gaming topics. And a couple of big brands that were interested in the target groups, especially the so-called unreachables, which is
why are they called unreachables?
Because the young, especially male, cliche gamer is a detached user, is a detached consumer, who's not watching linear media, is not watching television, is not really consuming print, is not really using too much radio, but everything's on demand these days. So especially the target audience, 18 to 29, 18 to 34, is an audience that's very, very hard to reach. They install ad block. 65% of these users had ad block installed. They consume premium content, usually don't even have a television anymore. They just they watch their series and their television and their movie theater, and yeah, their news channels is the web. And here's where new dimensions of marketing have to come in. So gaming is a very an apt way to do it. And of course the main challenge up until now was that in gaming you have esports, you have all these competitive things, you have teams, you have testimonials, you have representatives, a lot of lighthouse activations that you can actually tap into, and that are very welcoming for brands, that are very much sponsorship-like, like other sports. And so this is something that brands have been understanding for a long, long time, how to work with sports entities. Now it's a new sports. The people don't look as athletic maybe as in other sports, but they do have a huge platform. They have huge following, they have a lot of people and a lot of attention and time going into it, so it's a great place for brands to position. And
so that's basically also the playing field of Enso, I guess, of Enso.io.
Yes, exactly, and actually and we started out with the cliche gamer a little bit. We on client side, and this is like all the way through my agency career. Whenever you mention video gaming, you have this picture of a little bit with maybe not the greatest skin teenager sitting in his basement of his mom's house with a water-cooled PC and lots of gadgets and different things around the computer, a huge screen, the headphones, the gaming chair. And that is still part of the world, but gaming is actually quite inclusive. And the different dimensions that you can actually game in, these days everybody has their mobile phone, which is the #1 gaming device, that actually now is evolving into a competitive gaming device as well. Mobile esports are very much on the rise, especially in Asia. So here's another big thing coming, and the competitive side is quite interesting because it has all these it has the main essence of a sports sponsorship, but there's like around 500 to 600 million people that follow competitive esports. But there is 3 billion and more than 3 billion casual gamers. There's of course a nice overlap here, but it means close to half of the world population is considered gamers now, and are more and more moving into the same kind of behaviors that the classical unreachables are having, which is consuming a lot of their content on streaming platforms, mainly Twitch, which now does not only show only competitive esports, it shows all kinds of cultural phenomenons, like other distribution channels as well, the same way that YouTube has been distributing that. And so here's a grand space also for brands to become active.
And I guess that's the thing. So how in your experience, of course we all know you have been there as well, like your classical advertisement, super annoying, like your 15 seconds YouTube clip, your 60 seconds unskippable YouTube clip, your banner ads, and of course we all know that on mobile games you still have that, right? Super annoying, but I guess the challenge is to find different ways to advertise in games.
Well, definitely, yes. I mean, every time, and we onboard a lot, and we speak to a lot of games publishers, we look at a lot of games. I have a lot of mobile games on my phone to try them out, to see what's going on. And I go to the App Store a lot. I go to the Google Play Store, I go to the Apple Store, and almost every mobile game, almost every free-to-play game has the 5, 6, 7 first reviews are like, this is a great game, but the ads are really annoying.
Yeah.
And
Exactly.
that's a sentiment that I can totally understand. You know, when you play them, I do play them, not like continuously, but I play them for a while in order to check them out and find out what qualities they have. And because I have to sell them to my clients ultimately. I do find these ads very annoying. And when you said it, I felt instantly guilty because a couple of really disruptive and distracting ad formats in the digital space were part of my work in the earlier years. So I'm actually very happy to work in a space now where we are very much respecting and trying to improve the user experience.
That's a good point, to improve the user experience. Because, like you said, ads on mobile games, they are like the opposite of improving the user experience, right? So like after every level of a game, you have to watch a 30-second clip or whatever. Or a banner is positioned in a way that you accidentally click on it every second time. So what is a good example of a enhanced or improved user experience with ad content?
Yeah, actually it's pretty simple. I mean, what we need to understand first is that nothing in entertainment is free, right? So when we watch television, we accept an ad break. We might skip it. We might change the channel. We might go to our mobile phone when the spot is on. But we accept it because we know that we're getting the content for free, more or less. The same goes pretty much for every other type of content. You know, either it's sponsored or I pay for it. Nothing's for free. So the game developers that give their games out for free to play, they have to monetize in some way. So it's a necessary evil. But of course, there's better ways to do it. And that's the main conversation that we have with all the games is, look guys, you can actually avoid these very disruptive and very annoying ads and put blended organic ads into places where they're not disturbing the game experience, where they're not keeping people from what they want to do, which is play. Or like you said, the unskippable video ad on your streaming channel. You know, you're just pretty much, you're
forcing the ad experience onto the user.
And you let people force it upon you because you want to consume the content for free. And I've had YouTube Premium for 3 months or for 4 months because there were certain work things that I had to do, and then I canceled it again. And instantly the channel became so much less attractive for me.
Yeah.
Because there's, especially if you watch longer videos, you have now interstitial, you have the pop-up, you have all different kinds, and it's understandable that these platforms would enforce these type of ads because they have to monetize the content. Yeah.
So either you pay for it or you consume the ads. So that's just the two options you have, basically.
And we have actually a lot of publishers that are seeing a great improvement in their user retention. They're avoiding churn of users that are annoyed by the ads by putting organic ads inside. There's still going to be an impact. They still see these ads, and our technology measures the viewability of these ads, which is extremely important in order to also have a KPI on the impact of it.
And can you give an example of the ads? How would they look? How would I imagine that? So
the great thing is, you probably don't have to imagine it because you've seen it before, especially in games that are somewhere close to real life. If you know a football stadium from real life, you know a tennis court from real life, you know a racetrack from real life, you know a city scene from real life, so you know what ads look like in that environment. And that's what we're trying to mirror. We're trying to actually mirror real life, imitate life, by giving the user an enhanced, realistic experience of real advertisers and real ad placements that actually already exist. Of course, there's exceptions. There's games where, let's say, a fantasy game might not exactly have these ad placements already existing naturally, but they might also be looking for a way to monetize in a user-friendly way. And then you become creative and you say, okay, why can't there be an ad placement here or there? And of course, it's always it's a justified question. Why do I have a Coca-Cola ad in a space game that's playing in a different galaxy?
But it can, like in this case, can also become kind of fun to, I guess, for the creatives as well, to create a Coca-Cola poster that maybe transpires into the year 4000.
Exactly.
How could Coca-Cola look like then?
And that's one example. We're working with agencies, with creative agencies as well, because it's very interesting to do that. And if you look at games like Cyberpunk
Yeah,
or
exactly. Yeah.
yeah, and you'll see that it's a very interesting model to transform the brands. Or a great example would be iRobot, where a big German car maker supplied the entire movie with excellent concept vehicles for this.
Yeah.
So there's a great opportunity for creatives. It's a great playground, and I think the potential for brands has long not been exhausted.
Yeah. So you kind of, this is your daily challenge, and I think the fun of it, I guess, to sit down and kind of think about, okay, how can we enhance that, and how can we bring the brand into the game, maybe in a sensible way. So I find it highly interesting and really fun to think about these things. And is there even, like I for instance experienced that, I guess it was Polestar who integrated their car into a racing game, which is like the perfect opportunity for product placement, right? You would be stupid to not do it. And these ways are super entertaining, I think. And like you said, like enhancing the user experience and even willingly consume the ad, basically. So
I mean, the car example is the perfect one, because this has actually been going on for quite some time. And we know actually back from the days, the racing games, I won't name any particular ones, but the racing games would go to the car makers and say, can we get your car? And then the car maker would have a license fee from the game, so could use the car into the game. And I've talked to a C-level executive from a German car brand, and he says that used to happen. We used to meet with games makers, and they would offer us money, and then we'd say, okay, what kind of model? But this, but it can't crash, it can't do this, it can't do that. What happens now these days? The car makers go to the games, beg them on their knees, give them tons of money, so they will have the newest model or the exact model inside of the game. You can crash it, you can put it in any kind of color that's realistic. And of course, there's such a big opportunity to build their image here in this space that offers, especially a young audience, very impressionable. If I look at my own kids, what kind of car brands they like, has a lot to do with what I like, of course, parental influence, but it also has to do with what kind of content they see and what kind of brands they are consuming here. So games are a perfect way.
Yeah, I totally see that, and it's logical to have that. And I like the idea, or the way that it switched around, that basically from the game developer studios, that they had a proof of concept, it works if you put the car into the game. And now I guess the brands see, like you said, the huge audience of unreachables that is reachable. And I think the percentage of casual gamers has risen in the last 10 years, I guess. People that would not have been playing games like 10 years ago are playing games now. I think a lot of massive multiplayer online games like GTA, for instance, they have a huge audience, right? And do you have any, do you see any reflection of real world value of a brand in the digital world there? So if something is valuable outside in the real world, is it as valuable in this context?
You mean by virtual objects or virtual assets?
Yeah, for instance, a famous car brand on the outside, an expensive one, is it as liked, or is it as valuable in the game?
I don't have to do a lot of speculation on this, because it's very easy to see. The first thing, we have a really nice driving game, Ultimate Driving, it's called, mobile game. And I wanted to take screenshots of our campaigns for my clients, so I went in and I had the standard car, which is okay. I think it's a Lamborghini. It's okay. But I saw, they also have an Audi A8, R8, so maybe I want that. So I played a couple of rounds, gained a couple of coins. I could have bought it directly with hard currency. And lots of people do that. In-app purchases are a tremendous business. It's been 2.4 billion in Germany alone in 2020, just in-app purchases.
In-game purchases?
In-app purchases, yes.
Wow.
So, and we had a tremendous rise of casual gaming, actually. We started out with 34.6 something million gamers in 2019. We had 6 million more in 2020. The pandemic has done its part, and it does not look like people will, go back to not gaming.
It's
so
addictive.
It's half of the population. In countries like France, you actually have an even higher. You have 60% of the population that's constantly gaming.
Oh wow.
But coming back to the purchase example, I gained my coins. I did some races. I bought that car that I wanted, because for the same reason that I buy a nice car in real life, because either for image or because I have a certain. Why do people consume? They have certain things that they like, and of course, if a brand enters this space to build their image, the same way they would be the jersey sponsor of your favorite club.
Exactly. Yeah.
They build their sympathy, and they build presence. They build relevance. At the end of the day, a brand has to become and stay relevant, and be on top of mind, especially when it comes to a point of purchase.
Yeah, absolutely. And in-game or in-app purchases are something that I think a lot of people do not understand. Why would people spend? I mean, some people spend a fortune, like a real fortune, in games. Do you have any ideas, insights why people do that? Why would someone spend 1,000 euros in a game?
Yeah, it's a good question. But also the answer here, I think, is pretty simple. For the same reason we spend time or money on anything in life, for the same motivations. It's same intrinsic motivations that lead us to buy a sweatshirt, to buy a pair of jeans or a sneaker. What people have to understand is that a generation that's growing up right now, there's been a paradigm change in their perception of goods and value. Virtual goods have more value to an upcoming, like Roblox generation. During the pandemic, 75% of American teenagers were on that platform. That's 3/4 of the population of the country under the age of 20 was on Roblox. My avatar and my look and my image, everything about me there, is more seen and perceived and contributes to my image and to my social standing. That's what most people consume for, to improve their social standing, if we're honest.
Yeah, sure.
So the virtual good actually has higher value sometimes than the physical sneaker or the physical outfit to that generation. And this is what we need to understand. And I think as soon as we have, there'll be lots of business models and lots of investments to be done.
I think we're now touching on a topic that is hyped the last year, 1.5 years, when talking about people, youngsters, adolescent people are on Roblox. Everyone, I guess, has heard of that. We have the hyped word of the metaverse. Is Roblox the metaverse, or what is the metaverse?
Definitions are a difficult thing, aren't they? I'm working in our BVDW lab, in the Federal Associations lab. We're actually working on a definition that we consider pragmatic in order to describe what a metaverse can be. Personally, I believe it's not going to be metaverses. There are universes, but they usually don't have anything to do with each other. But inside a universe or a metaverse, in that case, interoperability, a seamless experience between the different applications, between the different experiences, between the different games, between anything I can do here, that has to be consistent, has to be persistent, it has to be individualizable. So there's very many dimensions layered on top of each other to contribute to it, but I think it's going to be one metaverse, and there's going to be different experiences in it.
Okay, I try to challenge that. Maybe there will be, or let's say at the moment, I think that there are several metaverses, because like you said, there is no interoperability between them. If I'm playing Minecraft, I won't have any possibility to interact with something in GTA roleplay or in Roblox. So you think that this is a challenge for the future, to get these different games, that they kind of have a connected API or whatever, that it's the same?
Good question. I'm in no position to give technical information, how that would even look like, how a standard, because we know we have the HTML, the text message language, that's the standard that we communicate text and picture, and now we have video standards, and we have the video players that, and we should have the same kind of standard. How hard that can be, we just recently saw the European law for having the same charger on any electronic device. How hard that was, how long it went, and how much anti-pressure is actually coming from the industry against it. So there's always going to be players, and of course there's big companies. One of the biggest companies changed their name in order to become more future-proof, I guess. And there's mainly walled gardens going in because there's business models behind it, and so it's going to be very difficult to argue to a person that has a walled garden that's working very well and has a lot of traction to open it up.
Yeah, of course.
And open their ecosystem and pretty much make it interchangeable and interoperable. So that's going to be tremendously challenging. And the question is politics going to do that? Are we as a society going to decide on that we need it, that we need that interoperability? Because without it, I believe it's not going to be a metaverse that actually works. And the important, let's say, attributes that metaverse should have don't exist in a lot of the ones that you call metaverses, because first of all, most of these aren't already decentralized. They aren't blockchain based. It's just a couple, and those are very small. So relevance and mainstream relevance for platforms, it's something that can only be achieved if you have these standards and if you have a common ground to start from. And we are at least a decade away from that for sure.
Yeah, I guess, yeah. It will take some time. And like you mentioned a big company that named itself after Meta. I think, or maybe I'm wrong, but since this announcement, everyone thinks of the metaverse as VR. Do you think this is like, does it make sense? Has the metaverse to be VR?
At a certain point it should be, for the simple reason that the immersion is what makes it really, really special. The utopian view of it, of course, I mean, there's lots of dystopian views that I might or might not agree with, but of course, it's art, it's literature that gives us ideas about what that might look like. Some are better, some are worse. But of course, the immersion of virtual reality and of course, all the wearables that come with it in order to control it, in order to experience it, and to make it more immersive, like feelable. All of that is going to actually become the turning point where this becomes so, because people now can't imagine that they will spend a significant amount of time in a metaverse or in a virtual world, because it's not really breaking technology. That makes it very, very convenient.
And it's quite cumbersome at the moment, right? You have this big headset, and it doesn't appeal to a lot of people to be there. And I have seen a lot of developments just in the last month that are all about our senses, like being tactile, like being able to smell something or feel something on your lips, like if you eat something, or even like a whole exosuit that kind of has a resistance that you can't move. And I think all these things are very important on a way to make it really immersive, because like in VR, if there is something, I can just kind of swipe through it. There's nothing. And I think that's also cumbersome, or it is a problem for people who are not used to it, that there is no resistance, for instance, in the world. And do you think that there will be like a lot of opportunities in the future, like in like you said, next 10 years? What do you think will be the next steps, developments there? Do you have any clue, any suggestion?
I mean, there's tons of development going on, and if you look left and right, I mean, it has been going on for more than a decade. VR, certainly not being mainstream, but companies like Meta and the Oculus headset are really pushing that, are really pushing mass adoption, and there's other companies out there that will join that will join the show and that will contribute to that as well, because nobody wants to be left behind.
Yeah.
So there's tons of things that are going on, but ultimately, if we look at, I mean, life imitates art.
Mm-hmm.
If I may call Star Trek art, but ultimately what we're looking at is a holodeck.
Yeah.
We're looking at
a
100%,
really,
100% real immersive experience, and it looks like we're getting there.
Mm-hmm.
We're getting there. We are saying slowly, but actually, if you ask a person from 40 years ago, he would say he would be blown away by the speed of development that we actually have right now. We look at quantum computing, a whole different thing, because actually, in order to get that immersiveness, we have to have much more calculating power than we do right now. So there's thresholds, there's stepstones that we need to overcome, and all of that together, I think the small developments, comparatively small developments that are going on, the next best headset, the next best resolution. You mentioned that, you know, when we're streaming the Olympics, we're streaming them in 8K now.
8K, yeah. 8K
so resolution is something that we're completely obsessed with, but we're also creating so much data that we can't even cope with anymore.
Yeah, that's a huge problem, like bandwidth-wise or storage-wise, right?
Now imagine 3 billion or 4 billion people at the same time having completely individualized, immersive experiences.
Yeah.
In a digital
imagine them all together being at the same place at the same time. You need to stream the view of 3.5 million people in, let's say, even if it's just 4K.
Here we go.
I think the internet will just break at that moment.
Not in the good way.
Not in a good way. Exactly. And do you think that games will be the leading factor in this?
They are. They have been for a long time. We just didn't call it metaverse. We call it gaming. Yeah. And everything that kind of makes a place desirable to be is already entailed in the gaming space. There's the 3D world, mostly not consumed by VR, but by a screen right now. Yeah. But a lot of things you can already also consume in VR. So it's going to be more immersive. It's going to be in PlayStation VR and all these other devices, HTC, and it has a society. It has a social. It has a social component. It has the social exchange. You have your peers. You have your groups. You have your interactions. You have currency. You have purchases. You have exchange transactions of goods against money.
And sometimes reward money.
Oftentimes real world money, a lot of money. If we look at the big sports games that are really capitalizing on this. So pretty much everything that needs to be done in terms of an economic approach is already established by gaming, and has been for 10 years or more.
Yeah, even more. If I look back, like World of Warcraft was, I think, the first big thing, like it was called the heroin of gaming back then. The stories of people not eating, sleeping, whatever, taking care of themselves just for the game. And I think decentralized finance like Bitcoin, Ethereum is already the kind of a shift in this direction, because it's also, this kind of can interlock with that economy really easy. I think you don't need PayPal anymore, or a bank account in that case. You have just your Bitcoin wallet, and this is already like accepted everywhere. You don't have any interchange in between.
Not accepted in too many real life places, which is a challenge, and it's going.
I think it's a matter of time.
Yeah, but it's also going to stay a challenge, because we're missing one important thing, which again is mass adoption and a standard that allows us to, because there's a lot of problems with virtual currency, well, with cryptocurrency, a lot of problems that we haven't figured out yet. Yeah. We will ultimately figure them out because we have to.
Yeah, like instability, basically. The volatility of the whole thing is, yeah, that's like a death for an economy, basically, if it's just based on that. And with all these things going on, and you already mentioned it, that we as a society have to keep track of that. Do you think that the metaverses, gaming, whatever, will split society?
That's a very deep question, and I'm afraid to go down that rabbit hole. But there's a chance. And the reason I'm saying that, although I'm a very optimistic person, very positive, usually, people say, the problem is that everything that we do in digital, that we do in virtual, is always going to have a disturbing element, which is the human. And our personalities, which are maybe not as inclusive as the space could be, and we tend to carry our problems into each new dimension. And unfortunately, as we've seen with social media, it kind of also starts to catalyze and to enhance the problems, the good and the bad. And so there's definitely a risk to have really big cultural and societal changes and challenges for it. But we need to overcome that.
Yeah. And I think that, yeah, absolutely, like this, if we don't solve our problems in the real world, they will transpire into the digital world for sure. And of course there is this, like there is a toxicity in a lot of these virtual societies basically there, and I think it is because there is no real life consequence, or no consequence that you can, that really is a problem. Like, okay, you get banned from a server, okay, I create a new account, right? But if this would mean you get a fine on your real life currency, or police is knocking on your door, we've just seen like the research that one of the German TV shows did with what happens in a VR or virtual world oftentimes does not have consequences. And I think this is something that we need to solve.
No questions there. I mean, when we look at who's supposed to solve it, we're looking at an old economy, old world organization that has actually not had any chance to even try to keep up with the development in the virtual worlds,
like
or in the social bubbles. And the people responsible for it are obviously either not able or willing to have more control. And the lawmakers, and especially the executive branch, are having a really time following all these developments. It's like hacking. You know, why are there still so much hacks? Why are there still so much spam and other fraud topics going on? Because if you see the chance to monetize, to make money out of it, there's always going to be smart people that will find a way to circumvent the system. So lawmakers have always had a hard time following the strategies of trick thieves and fraudulent people in real life. It's going to be the same in digital, only multiplied by a tenfold. Yeah. And that's definitely a hard thing to
overcome, or it's a challenge
to even grasp.
Yeah, and when I talked about the split of society, I mean, we've been talking about the problems there, but its accessibility is another one. If you don't have access, you're kind of left out. And this is like multidimensional, right? Sometimes it's just your social status. Sometimes it's your whole country, like your whole infrastructure that kind of leaves you out. And I think it is, well, do you agree, is it as an IRL society our responsibility to kind of facilitate it and take the others with us?
It should be. I don't know if it's realistic, but we don't have to speculate on everything. We have seen a lot of developments in the past. The phenomenon of leapfrogging in regions like China, where a brick and mortar industry, like we had here with people that build their stores, and then they build a store next to that, and then they build next door in the next town, that was completely jumped by the mobile commerce and the digital commerce options that these people had. So there's no classical development in these economies. The same goes for mobile banking. In Africa, it's absolutely normal to do your mobile banking on a feature phone, not on a smartphone.
Oh wow! Okay.
And this happens why? Because you don't have either time nor money to travel 200 kilometers to the next bank branch.
Yeah,
So you do what's available and do what's convenient, and you do what works for you. And the same is going to happen in the digital space, accessibility is key, absolutely.
Yeah.
So a lot of the devices right now, and there's great examples of things that are considered, 3D and meta, that are accessible through a normal screen. And it has to be. It has to be accessible through a normal screen, through a display on your smartphone, on your tablet, and also with a VR headset. But not everyone's going to have a VR headset soon enough. But we still don't want to stop the development until everybody has the hardware, right?
Yeah, yeah.
We didn't stop the world because not everybody had an iPhone yet, or had an Android yet, or Samsung, or.
I guess Apple would love that. Yeah. That we stop until everyone has a iPhone.
And people love to hate Apple, so.
Yeah. What you mentioned is something like people are very adaptive. We can easily adapt to new conditions, and this is something that's quite strong in humanity, I think. And speaking of adaptation, is the gaming world, is it more accessible to people with, for instance, disabilities than the real world?
I would say so, yeah. Of course, you mentioned some of the problems, which are, like the same kind of peer pressure that you might experience at school or anywhere else. You might find that in the game as well. There's been big stories about some of the battle games where people that are like experts were going around killing of noobs and actually verbally assaulting them. To mock them, and this is going to be prevalent problems. But if you talk about barrier-free access, there's been a great example from Microsoft who have released an adaptive controller, and released it when they could have advertised anything else. They released this as a Super Bowl commercial to show their adaptive controller that enables people with disabilities to game, to be there with their peers, because all of their peers are playing. And these were children that didn't have hands or other disabilities, and they are, they have been playing with keyboards and
in a very
mice
creative way sometimes.
In very creative ways, to be there. And now we see that there is a way to include them, and there is Twitch channels for people that are hearing impaired or that are blind. So there's all kinds of things that technology is helping us to cope with.
Yeah. So we have a really great side to technology and gaming in there. So I think we should not lose sight of that. And I think also like your avatar can help that you are more accepted if you have a disability that kind of is not accepted in your culture, or so it helps people to still develop, I guess, as a person, and to it sounds strange, but to have a life, basically there. I think that's also a beautiful thought for the metaverse, that people, if you have a degenerative illness like ALS, you might still be able to participate in the world if you're still able to kind of control something. And this is, I think, also the beauty of virtual worlds, of gaming. So that's very inclusive. And you just talked about Microsoft. They're currently going around and buying kind of every big publisher. Is there a danger in that?
Who am I to judge? But it definitely sends a signal to the industry, which is, we know that there's a significant opportunity here. Microsoft has actually tried different things in the past to leverage this. They've built a great platform, a great gaming platform. The Game Pass has been wildly successful. So they're doing a lot of interesting things. Bringing ads to free-to-play games is one of the other interesting things that even the biggest competitor directly adopted, or probably also had up their sleeve. I'm not going to say that. So
Microsoft were the first with mobile gaming, with gaming ads?
No, but on the console platform,
okay.
It's definitely a new introduction.
Interesting.
And it's exciting because it offers studios that don't have vast resources, that don't have vast sales, to be able to monetize.
And to get enough money to develop further, right? And I was just thinking if we again have like a accumulation of all publishers at Microsoft, it kind of feels like a monopoly, you know. I think that there might be some kind of danger. On the other hand, it's also great for setting standards. Like, for instance, if you think about some kind of ad format, right? We've been talking about the interoperability between games. If you find something, people are creative to find a new thing, the ad thing, and this is interoperable between all those games. I think that's a quite interesting concept, and in fact, to have this possibility, and to think that a company like Microsoft is thinking about these things to have something like that influence.
Obviously, they are. I mean, we are, and they already exist in certain ways. We have a standard for ads in games.
Yeah.
We have a distribution standard. We are currently the only ones adopting it, but we are the main player in this space. And of course, there are standards in the industry, in the advertising industry, especially when it comes to KPIs like viewability, when it comes to IVT, fraudulent activity, what's acceptable, what's not, and ad sizes, other assets that could take
2
place.
2 GB videos, yeah.
Why not? I mean, ultimately, if we're talking about a extremely high resolution, something's got to give.
Yeah,
so
that's true. Yeah.
So up until now, to the point here, we have not been thinking so much about optimizing. Maybe because we had 5G, we're going to have 6G, we're going to have 10G at a certain point. We're going to have glass fiber, and we're going to have to deal with it. And if we reach a certain point where technology is not going to cope anymore, then we start optimizing. Like you said, we're great at adapting, but we're also very lazy. Lazy can be great for innovation.
Absolutely.
Most of the greatest innovations come from laziness, because if you have a lazy developer, he will write more efficient code. Yeah. I think he will automate a lot of things.
Was it Bill Gates who said that? I'd like to employ lazy people because they find a way to make a lot of work in a short amount of time. It's, of course.
Sounds like him. Could be, yes.
Yeah, and I mean, like in my opinion, computers are there to make tasks that are very repetitive and be there to optimize, basically, right? And if you're talking about standards of distribution, like in my mind, like in the last month, basically, I've always thought about, you know, everyone is buying one of the Bored Ape Yacht Club NFTs. One might think about that, whatever, but in my view, maybe you can elaborate on that. I would love to have these things like being interoperable with everything. If I buy something, I want to have it everywhere. Does it make a sense?
Completely, and that's the idea of the blockchain, to have that basis for not only virtual goods or property. I mean, an NFT is a token, it's a property that I can own, and that has to exist in order to make this ecosystem work. Talking about, I mean, when you say everybody's buying them, I look on OpenSea and I see that 15,000 people are buying it. That's not a lot of people. That's not everybody. I mean, everybody that has one is going out there and saying it. Of course, if you have famous people, if you have testimonials, and if you have these evangelists that are going out there and carry them in their social media feed, of course, it seems very obvious. When we look at mass adoption, we're far from that. If we look at how many, currently I think we're talking about 15 million wallets. Yeah. Out of how many people on the planet?
7 point.
Yeah. My favorite number is the number of Bitcoin millionaires, which currently is around 9,770. There's 55 million millionaires in the world. So the comparison is extreme. And
I think it's all about because of the media hype, right? Because it's so absurd for most people to spend million or thousands of euros or dollars on an image of an ape.
Well, I mean, a piece of gold does not inherently have any value. It's the value that we attribute to it.
Yeah.
And just like at the gold rush, people are jumping on this right now, and they love a good story. They love a story, especially of becoming rich overnight. It's a great story, which I can understand. The question is, how realistic is it? How many of the cowboys or settlers that went to the West actually became rich of gold? It's a handful, and the same goes for this hype.
Yeah, sure.
But it's an even more rigged game than it was then. It's not only the people that can claim the best places to dig, that have money to get good shovels, and ideally have people that mine for them. Right now the game's even more rigged because these people that have the resources to get the NFTs, and they're very well interconnected, and they're driving the price, and that makes for an excellent story, but I don't think it makes for an excellent perspective.
What? I totally agree. I completely agree. It's basically in the current, how NFTs are currently viewed and used. It's just the people who have the most money will make more money, basically, right? And people who have a huge audience are able to push the price of the NFT just like infinite. But what would be a perspective of NFTs that you, or that you think is more valuable than that?
There's so many different opportunities in that right now we don't really look at, because we have that hype and we have these tremendous amounts of money that are being transferred and made here, that we don't look beyond it. But it's not an NFT bubble that's going to burst. It's not like NFTs are going away, because there's thousands of excellent applications for NFTs. The simplest example, to monetize your art. I'm a musician. I can have a virtual concert, and I can have a fan club. I can give out NFTs for my fans, and you can only get into my concert if you own one of my NFTs. Yeah. If these NFTs are traded with a smart contract, the artist is always going to earn for every trade.
Which is not the case in the real world.
Exactly. And it can be excellent to avoid bootlegging, pretty much. It can be excellent to monetize things that have been hard to live off up until now. And so it's going to make our culture, it's going to make our society much more colorful, in my opinion. And then there's the very pragmatic economic things, like, I mean, sports entities have always been a big money machine. Now you can fill a stadium, instead of a season pass for the stadium, you can give out virtual season passes for people to enter with their VR headset and be there live at every game. So, of course, you don't need NFTs for that, but you asked about NFTs, so I'm struggling to find more examples right now. But it's, I mean, there's so many different opportunities in it, especially in blockchain identification. My digital identity is going to be something so tremendously important. Exactly. That we right now, because we're actually pretty stupid about, especially about media competence, when we look at how do we educate our children on how to consume digital content, which for them is just content. They don't know differentiate between digital and analog.
Yeah, yeah. It's kind of for them already everything. I mean, it's for not only just the people who are children now, but the younger generation, Gen Z. For them, it's already like intertwined. Even if I look at myself, I have friends whom I've never seen in real life. I just know them way back from ICQ until now. I've never met them, like IRL, but I consider them friends, like for me. And this is much more true for the younger generation, right? They don't discriminate between IRL and the virtual world. And I think what you said about NFTs and the identity, I think this is a way more down-to-earth use for that, to have something that proves like the genuineness of something. This is the original. This is my digital ID card. This is my digital identity, like the whole thing, right? Basically, so that something you build up in one game, you will have in another as well, and it's like really bound to you in that way. And how do you think that it's my advertising mind, do you think that advertisers can kind of, they try to use NFTs right now, but what would be like a more sensible way to use NFTs? Just because currently it's really most art and sports entities, like you said, but do you think there's another application to it currently?
Ultimately, all new technologies become interesting for advertisers when they are mass adopted. With a number of wallets right now, I think brands are, of course, loving to jump on the PR. They all want to do something in the metaverse. I have this briefing every day.
Do something social back then, now it's do something metaverse.
Do something on social, do something with an influencer, and now it's do something with NFTs or do something in the metaverse. And that's understandable. That's what the job is about, is to see where the trend is going and to making the best possible use of it. So it's completely understandable. But brands, first of all, they have this huge opportunity to rebuild and extend their image into a space that gives them so much playground. So you can become really creative. Right now, it is far from risky. Of course, we know the S-storm from social, and we know the different traps. Social media is a minefield. But the metaverse or even gaming is the same in that way, because everywhere people get together and come together and socialize with each other, it can go south really quickly.
Yeah, indeed.
That escalated quickly is one of the most used memes, and rightfully so.
Indeed.
The question is, how do I jump on this opportunity right now? Do I have to be really quick? Is my fear of missing out too strong to keep me from making sensible decisions? On the other hand, the investment right now is not too big. You can go about it really smart and actually have great takeaways.
And you're still a first mover, right?
An early mover.
Early mover, yeah.
But you can be a first mover for lots of things if you are a little bit creative. And but there's also a lot of challenges in that, because of course, if you look at Meta, they announced they want to hire 10,000 developers in Europe. If you are a young person that knows how to work with Blender and knows their way around 3D, you don't want to work for Meta. You want to work as a freelancer. You can make tons of money right now, and you will be able to do that much more in the upcoming years. So here's the challenge: the resources. It's going to be energy resources. We haven't even touched on the sustainability of NFT and blockchain. So here's something to deal with.
Which is a minefield as well.
It's not like when we stop. This is a reality we have to talk about. It's not like when we stop jumping on planes and go to that place virtually with our VR headset or our tactile suit. It's not like we're not creating any CO2 at all. And this is still far away from our conscience. This is still far away from our conscience, from our perception. But these are things that ultimately will play a part in the development and that have to be considered.
Definitely, especially the CO2 part. I just imagine, like, after 5 hours of gaming, you get like, when you buy a plane ticket, you have this flight produces X tons of CO2. Like after 5 hours of gaming VR, you have like, you produced 200 tons of CO2 just now.
There's no dark mode in gaming.
Indeed, that's true. You kind of touched upon the topic of brands. Do you think that brands need to reinvent themselves or look at themselves differently in the metaverse?
They can.
Gaming metaverse.
They can. So here's another opportunity. Is another big chance to become creative. Many brands are about their established image. and to prevail at. But you can also, and you see a lot of, especially fashion brands right now, are of course that need to be, at the pulse of things, are picking this up and are doing creative things with it. Of course, they have an easier job than, let's say, mid-sized, I don't know, industrial producer
or car manufacturer
in the south of Germany.
Yeah.
But there is still big opportunities. Tradition. This is also something quite. We've seen with everything changing with social media. We've seen a big renaissance of traditional values. So the more things change, the more a generation feels a need to have something stable. So also, and what could be that? That could be a big old brand from my childhood that just gives me that comfort. So it's a yes and a yes. Please do both. Consider it, but you have to reinvent yourself. You can reinvent yourself, but you can also very much rely on the brand that you've built. There's nothing worse than a brand that decides to throw everything overboard to become something they aren't.
Yeah, true. And I have seen a lot of users, or how do you think brands should behave? In certain games, users themselves came up with branded items. Bags of Louis Vuitton, Supreme, that are not from the the company is not like investing in this game, right? Users just came up with that because it's a value in real world and they kind of want to brag about it in the virtual world. Like usually you would kind of file a copyright claim, right? It's, hey, why are you using this? Do you think they should do the opposite and kind of reinforce this?
Look, it's free advertising, and the reason why people do that is fandom. So if you don't have a desirable brand, people should get concerned if one of their items or their logo is not on a t-shirt on Roblox today. Then they should get concerned, because then their brand is not desirable. And if they go after people that rip off the brand, and they're not doing that to profit from it. They're doing it to actually state their fandom.
To show off.
To show off. And isn't that exactly what the brand wants? The desirability and the image, it's exactly what they want. When we come to a point where the brand has the desire to sell their own, virtual clothing.
NFTs based maybe.
NFT based maybe. Then we of course get to a point where it's quite important. I mean, you buy a Louis Vuitton bag, you have the certificate of originality, and with an NFT that's so much easier to do. So people will, right now, I can post a picture of a Bored Ape on my social media profile. Nobody's going to check.
The NFT,
Well, actually, a lot of people are going to get suspicious that know me and are going to check my wallet because it's transparent and if I own that or not.
Yeah, sure.
But that's also a new aspect. And here, again, more opportunity than risk.
Yeah, true. And I do think as well that brands also should embrace that, right? That people really want to use their logo, their items in the virtual world. And what I have kind of seen is that people created their own stuff. Like maybe there's a Louis Vuitton bag in real life, but there is no Louis Vuitton scooter, let's say that, right? So people create that by themselves. So I feel that brands need to consider, let's call it co-ownership, that users own the brand as well to a certain extent. So kind of create with the brand, and that not a single person owns it or a single entity, but like the community, the digital one.
That's a classical advertising view, and I can follow it because I of my agency life. But user-generated content and co-ownership and co-creation are interesting topics. There's the famous example of a German dishwashing brand that told their users, you can tell us what the new flavor should be. And they were of course thinking, oh, we're getting an apple cinnamon, or we're getting a lime lemon with strawberry, and the users had to choose. The users had to vote for it, and they ended up with fried chicken flavor. So they had to do that, or they had to kind of, agree or admit that that was not a great idea. So, and here's a good learning for a brand to maybe be careful with user-generated content.
Give certain restrictions and
yes, exactly.
Users.
But I mean, it does take away a little bit from the brand if you give co-ownership to people to create. It does stir a lot of creativity, but it also dissolves your brand values, because Louis Vuitton doesn't make scooters.
Nope.
As far as I know. It's possible.
Yeah.
But yeah, of course, there's certain things that you stand for, and there's risk in that as a brand to kind of water down your identity. So you should be careful with that. I'm not the one to decide it. I'm not anymore. I'm not anymore the person to bring it in front of the brand and to advise them to do that. I could still, in some cases, in our creative projects. But I think there's a limit to what's actually making sense when you have people. I mean, there's going to be great creatives and great ideas.
Yeah.
At the end of the day, who's going to own that? And
that's the question. Who's owning it? Is it the brand, because it's branded by the brand? Certainly not. So, right. But yeah, I think this is a topic that maybe each brand has to decide for themselves how they kind of treat that, how they, if they encourage it, or if they file a copyright claim against them, right? If Louis Vuitton says, we don't have a scooter, that's gonna cost you a Bitcoin.
You don't even have to have that argument. Louis Vuitton doesn't have to say, we don't have a scooter.
Yeah.
You used our logo. That's what brands
usually do.
And copyright is for.
Yeah.
So we don't have to invent the wheel. A lot of things are already in place, and we can actually. That's one thing that we can easily attribute to a digital or virtual space as well, because it has so much similarity to the real world, and that's pretty much. I'm not saying it's easy to actually send the police after these people, because they're going to be probably anonymous.
Yeah.
But there's a rule for that, and I mean every gathering of people, whether it's in person like us or it's our two avatars meeting in Horizon, there's got to be rules.
Yeah.
There's a reason why the Horizon avatars don't have lower bodies anymore.
Sometimes you have to learn through pain or failure. Yeah. And about pain, I think like one dystopia is that the virtual world will be full of advertising. Like everything is just full of. Was it? That was a film I think with Tom Cruise, where everything was like personalized.
Yeah.
Everywhere where he went, and
Minority Report.
Minority Report, right? And do you think we will end up in a metaverse and virtual world that is basically just consists of advertising?
Doesn't the world already? I think the latest number I read is like we consume up to 14,000 ads per day.
If you have a smartphone.
If you have a smartphone. Yeah. Also here, I hope that we're evolving in a positive way, and there's a lot of noise. If you want to, kind of scream through the noise, you can't constantly scream. The big brands certainly try it, but there's smarter ways. And there's always going to be new spaces, there's always going to be new ideas and realms to stick out. And gaming is that place right now, for sure. And there's huge opportunity for brands to say, well, this is the way to be different, but at the same way, respect the user. And by respecting them, you will gain their respect back.
Absolutely.
So I'm very much hoping there's a famous mock-up of a Chinese, I think it's the Chinese city, where pretty much everything is an ad, and you kind of have to try to figure out reality.
Even if you walk, it's just, yeah.
So it's difficult.
But I like what you just said, that with the brands, I think there's the opportunity for them to shape the virtual world in a good way. Like, and this is, I guess, something that users will really acknowledge and like. If a brand finds a way to advertise or create something new that really enhances everything, right? Then I think users will be thankful for that, and I think therein there lies the big opportunities and also the big challenge to not just put the next banner on your mobile game, but have something that is a bit more valuable to everyone. All right. Oh, we have questions in the chat. Exactly.
Looking forward.
Yeah. That's the question. How do you determine if a certain brand is worthy of having an ad placement in a certain gaming platform? So do you just say, okay, whatever brand, you can advertise wherever you want?
I get to decide which brand is worthy? No, I don't.
You don't?
No.
But how do you decide? Is it just money?
Oftentimes it's just money. I mean, just money? Are we really saying just money? Money makes the world go round. Advertising is not an exception, it's the rule. But yeah, it's pretty simple. At the end of the day, the content creator, in our case, it's games developers, they decide which brands are acceptable. In the case of Xbox or PlayStation, the platform owner decides who they will allow on it. Nintendo is another great example that I don't want to get into, but they have interesting rules that our CEO likes to recite because they allow adult content, but no advertising.
Yeah.
So here's, I mean, for us, it's actually not a big challenge. My main challenge lies in getting the brands into a good match, having a contextually good environment with a good target audience that actually is relevant. You know, it's all about relevance. And if you are a car, or if you are a tire, or if you are a helmet, you're great in a motorcycle game.
Yeah, maybe less in Minecraft. Yeah,
maybe less.
Yeah.
But then again, I see a steakhouse on the side of a football pitch. Where's the direct connection? It's awareness.
Yeah, that's true. So there is some instance currently at, like you said, at the platform owner or the games developer. So there is not just no rules. Basically, there is like a moral instance with discussable and sometimes questionable morals, but there is basically someone. Because with this question, I just like instantly thought, okay, there are brands, or maybe even like political parties that you don't want to have their advertising all over the place if they just have enough money, right? And I think it should stay in a way that there is some instance that kind of regulates that. And
a great example is Roblox, which has a population of 50% under the age of 13. So the community decided we don't, and by the community management, I mean the platform decided we don't want to advertise high fat, salt, or sugar foods.
Oh, cool.
We respect, you know, the children, and we are COPPA compliant, we are GDPR compliant, and there's certain things we won't show. Other video games say we will show pizza, but we won't show cigarettes or nicotine or alcohol, which of course is also tied to other legal issues of an 18+ audience, for example, or in Japan, 21+, or in America. So there's these things as well, and the publishers are dealing with that, but we didn't invent that. It's always been an issue, what kind of advertisers are allowed in what environment. In Germany, a cigarette brand can't advertise on television, and when they show an ad on a bus stop, they cannot show smoking people.
Yeah, not anymore.
So there's a rule for that, and we go by the rules.
Yeah. And I think there's also a big responsibility. Like you said, I like the Roblox approach. Basically to be aware of your who you reach, right? If you kind of brainwash young kids with a certain ads, then, and I think this approach in the real world advertising, we lost the touch at some point. There are ads out there where I say, well, questionable. So yeah, you're not like really aware of your reach and how you influence people basically. And
there's different categories that are definitely problematic. I was speaking with an ammunition maker for sports weapons, and even shooter games where you have a very distinct choice of attack weapons and all kinds of killing instruments, refuse to advertise for real life bullets.
Which, on the other hand,
would be a great fit.
Yeah, like on the surface, great fit. But they, of course, they know the responsibility that and the problem that they're always blamed for shootings that happen, and then this is a quite great move to not allow that, right? Because it seems so obvious. Yeah, then let's have like Heckler and Koch advertising in these games. But to not to this, to allow that is also a statement, I guess. So
it is definitely a statement, and it's an ethical decision, it's a moral decision. But what we also have to consider is these people are still making games for fun. It's hopefully fun for them to do that, to have that job, but it's also to make money. And if one way, or one of the main ways to make money out of it is advertising, at a certain point I have to say, okay, maybe this company makes a product that I don't like, or that I don't support the way it's made, or the way it's produced, or the way it's distributed, or maybe I don't like the morals of the company behind it. I can decide not to accept that, but I will have to suffer the consequences.
Yeah.
And here's a business model that is, but that's for every type of content.
Yeah, sure, definitely. Yeah, I think we could go into length with that. Especially the ethics about advertising is, I think, a whole nother talk, and the responsibilities. I liked our little conversation, our discussion about all these topics that are top of mind at the moment. I would like to thank all the viewers for sticking with us, the Gastwerk Hotel and BSBI to making this possible. We are taking a summer break. We'll be back in August, September with the 5th episode. Take care, stay healthy, and we will see you then, and have a good time. Bye.